Let me tell you something. I had that meeting with the members of my new management team. I used to know what it was exactly about how many auditions I had. Like suddenly the pilot season kicked off for me and I was getting pilot auditions for the first time. Really, it was like my first pilot season. I booked a pilot within 10 days after that meeting.
And that
First
was
pilot.
Emily Owens?
That was Emily Owens. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was literally like, you got all the ingredients. You just need to sharpen it up. You need to pull it together and take out the stuff you don't need and add this other thing that you're undervaluing and go do it. You got it. Go do it. And I literally booked a pilot within 10 days. But it was also because I had spent at that point, God, that was like, I'd finished college 7 years before that. So I had been like on the grind for a nice long time. And I had this massive toolbox that I just didn't know when to deploy the tools and how, and what were the most important things. And so like, I had definitely gotten my, grad school in the streets per the plan, but I just needed, I needed help. I needed somebody to help me refine everything. And I think that has been true throughout my career. It's like you reach this point where you're like, cool, I've accumulated all these skills and knowledge and community and network and all of that stuff. Somebody help me figure out how to work with this. I constantly need to, some sort of like, life coaching at various transitional stages. That's just how I am. But yeah.
We all do.
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is a podcast on directing for anybody that's, quite simply, ever watched anything. Visit PeteChatmon.com to get your official podcast merch, hoodies, hats, jackets, mugs, and other swag, and learn more about your host.
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is sponsored by the good folks at Scriptation. Scriptation is the Emmy Award-winning app for production that allows you to mark up scripts, transfer notes, generate breakdowns, and so much more. No matter where you fall on the call sheet, Scriptation makes it easy to go paperless, collaborate with your crew, and save hours of time. Go to Scriptation.com/Pete to learn more and receive a special offer exclusive to Let's Shoot listeners. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to episode 76 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. Today's guest is none other than the talented actor, artist, and philanthropist, Kelly McCreary. Kelly is also my lovely wife, but as you can tell, that did me no favors in securing this interview, as it took 75 episodes before I could book her for the podcast. That's a joke. Many of you know her for portraying Dr. Maggie Pierce on over 200 episodes of ABC's Grey's Anatomy, but she got her start in commercials and on Broadway and returned to the boards last fall for Dominique Morisseau's Bad Creole at the Signature Theater in New York City. I will admit it was somewhat awkward recording this interview with wifey while our baby slept, as we hoped that she would not wake up in the allotted time that we had scheduled, but nevertheless, we got through it, and better yet, got into her unique journey and more in this conversation. Now, before we get to Kelly, it's time for the catch up. We've got a very, 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 very special first ever announcement. That's right. We're doing our very first live podcast event in Los Angeles on March 19th at the Dynasty Typewriter. We're going to have a conversation with the creators and showrunners of Showtime's Yellow Jackets. That's Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson. The show premiered to, I think, its highest numbers in the last couple weeks for the season 3 premiere. We'll also be joined by producing director Jeff Bird, who we've had on the pod before, one of our favorite guests, and we will have members from the cast that are still being confirmed. Prior to this conversation, we will have a screening of episode 306 of Yellow Jackets that I had the pleasure of directing. It features some great revelations for the season, for the series, and it's something I'm very, very, very proud of. I can't wait for y'all to see it. Tickets are $20 in advance, $25 on the day of the event, and all proceeds will go to benefit victims of the California wildfires. Stay tuned for more details on our social channels at Pete Chatmon and at Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. I really do hope you'll join us live and bring your questions and good energy to this special event. Now, without further ado, let's get to it. This is episode 76 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon, starring Kelly McCreary.
Roll sound.
Speed.
The interview. Take one.
All right, so check it out. I don't really know where to start this interview. I'm not going to say I know everything about you, but I may know a bit. I might know more than some. I don't want to be presumptuous. Well, you know what? I don't want to be presumptuous and say I know more than most. And you got like a best friend who's like, I know everything. But I will start in a way that I often start with the actor, contingent of our guest profile. Tell me a little bit about these 6 people. I'm going to throw 6 names at you and you tell me something about it. Desi, Edwina, Mariana, Renata, Sherry, Sudabe. Who are these people and what do they mean to you?
Man, those were the incredible people, all women, that I understudied, or the characters that I understudied in Passing Strange. When it was on the Broadway, I understudied the phenomenal Deidre Aziza and Rebecca Naomi Jones in the Broadway production of Passing Strange, which starred, Stu was the lead. It was his story, semi-autobiographical story. And in Coleman Domingo, Issa Davis, Chad Goodridge, Daniel Breaker, Rebecca and Deidre, and this incredible band. And yeah, it was like the perfect Broadway show for me. At that point in my career, I was doing a lot of
What year were we talking?
Okay, so this was the year I booked this at the end of a dark time. It was 2007. And yeah. Okay, so I booked it at the end of 2007, which was I have been very adamant about, like, once I finished college, I was like, I don't accept money from my parents. I'm grown up and I take care of myself. And so that was a year that I was really broke. I was so broke and I was like, I can't afford to go home for Christmas and I'm not going to ask anybody for help. And I'm just going to spend the saddest Christmas of life in my apartment in New York City with, oh my God, it was the saddest Christmas. Eddie Gaffegi was in town and my apartment was like being repainted. It was just like a dust pit. It was absolute hell. We had like scrambled eggs for breakfast and then we went to the movies. It was. No. But normal. I should say it was like Christmas breakfast. Anyway, all I had to say that it's Passing Strange. We started rehearsals for that like the next week, maybe like the second week of January or something. And so it was the year 2008. And I was at that point an actor in New York who had a lot of theater experience. I was doing a lot of play development with incredible, the likes of Marcus Gardley and Katori Hall and Dominique Morisseau. We were all these kids coming up together at that time. And I was, reading all their new plays and developing them and then working regionally. And I was like, I had wanted to be Julie Andrews when I was a kid. So I fancied myself a singer, but I wasn't really, I couldn't really sing and I also couldn't dance. So my dreams of Broadway kind of got cold water splashed on them. And I realized I didn't really have the skill set to be doing musicals on Broadway. And so Passing Strange came along at the perfect time because it was about this. It was a musical, a rock musical that didn't require like Julie Andrews style singing and, the kind of singing that I could really handle and pull off. And it was a story about a coming of age story about a Black boy who happened to be from Los Angeles, who just whose sense of Blackness did not comport with those around him. And so he goes on this journey to sort of find himself and to discover his identity as a Black artist in the world. And Desi Mariana,
a story not unfamiliar to most Black artists.
yeah, exactly. It's classic. Josephine Baker, James Baldwin, it was deeply relatable. I think all Black artists, even if you do feel like you belong, still have that sense of like outsiderness inside of you, where you're like, I may belong somewhere, but like, where does my art fit in? Or where does this part of my identity fit in? And maybe that's not exclusive to Black artists, but I think it's very relatable to many.
Well, so before we got to 2007, 2008, just tell me about like, because am I right? You're from Milwaukee?
Yes, you are correct.
Right. So yeah, tell me about growing up in Milwaukee and kind of your first either introduction or like moment where you were you found you could find relief in storytelling and in the arts.
Okay. Well, growing up in Milwaukee, I had two full-time employed parents and three older siblings. And so it was a really busy household and made busier by the fact that my parents were really dedicated to making sure that we had a lot of like enrichment activities and stuff. And also by the fact that like, I couldn't afford like childcare and stuff. So in the summertime, we would go to summer school. We would go to summer school because it was like right there at the high school down the block.
Right.
And they had cool classes. Like they had swim class, they had art class, and it was, a place for my parents to put us during those summer months. And that is and we took art classes all day long, and so I think, yeah, I took like a musical theater class when I was
What age?
a kid. I think like second grade. I think I was like 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old. And I remember being very, very young when I was doing that stuff. But I remember I always liked, even just like reading books, I would animate the voices and, really come alive in story. And it was really, really like the most fun thing for me to do. Like I was athletic and I was curious about, they had us in ballet and soccer and all kinds of things. And I liked doing that stuff, always music. But the thing that really lit me up was pretending.
So did you understand that there was a pathway to that being a profession? Like how do you go from something lighting you up to I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to, try and carve out a professional life doing this thing that no one in my family before me has seemed to have done?
Well, I think that because I was from Milwaukee and like, Chicago was 90 miles away and there was somewhat of like a market for acting and stuff in Chicago, but for me it was like, the kids I saw on TV who were actors, they lived in LA and they were like from LA or their parents had moved them from Texas to, to change the whole family's life. And that wasn't happening for me. Right. And so I never actually imagined that TV and film would be part of my life as an artist. And
Okay.
what was accessible to me there in Milwaukee was theater. And so I wound up going to New York. Well, first of all, I wound up going to really terrific public schools in Milwaukee, and they were art schools. I went to a gifted and talented grade school, and then Roosevelt Middle School of the Arts for middle school, and Milwaukee High School of the Arts. And I got really strong academics and daily exposure to craft from the age of like 11. And so having spent my whole childhood in an arts-based education, I actually thought that I should study something else for college. So I chose New York because I thought I knew that eventually I would become an actor. And so I wanted to be living there to make that dream come true of like being a theater actor. But I majored in history for undergrad because I figured not only would I spend the rest of my life acting, but I also like wanted to be like a well-rounded person and not just have studied acting my whole life. So yeah. Did I answer your question? I feel like I'm rambling.
That answered it. Okay. So you go to, and this is all to catch up from where we began. So
Right.
you go to New York, you go to Barnard. What's your major? Tell me again.
History. I majored in history.
And okay. And so
Should I say
like
more
now,
about
how
that?
are you yeah. So how are you beginning to carve out like, or stay on track for this creative pursuit of being
Right. Well, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I had every intention of going to grad school for acting, right? So I majored in history, but Barnard didn't offer a theater minor. You could only major in theater. So if I could have, I would have minored in theater. That's as much time as I spent in the department, right? I did plays, I took the classes, and I did as much as I could. I did stuff throughout the university. I did productions, with other theater groups on campus. So I stayed really busy extracurricularly, acting and learning the craft. And then I spent a semester abroad at the British American Drama Academy. That was my study abroad option, was to go to conservatory for that semester and sort of like test it out, see if I could hack it, come time for grad school. And then actually what happened was that I had an acting teacher, an incredible acting teacher named Rebecca Guy. She came to Barnard and taught a scene study class on Fridays. And the rest of the week she taught at Juilliard. And she, at the time, ran this summer program called the Chautauqua Conservatory, or the theater program at the Chautauqua Conservatory. And she's like, at the time, it was kind of like a Juilliard summer school. It was open to theater students from anywhere, but like it was Juilliard teachers, and it was like mini Juilliard, classical training, vocal training from the teachers who taught there. So she invited me to come and audition for that. I did that. And then the following summer, then I graduated college. But that following summer, I did the Williamstown Theater Festival as a member of the non-equity company, which is like, there were at the time, and I think that this has changed too, but at the time there were 3 tiers of like young non-professional actors. There was the apprentices who like kind of did the grunt work of the festival. They
at the Williamsburg Festival,
at the Williamstown Theater Festival. And then there was and so they would be like kind of the background actors, and they had their own separate productions too. They could produce their own productions. And then there was the Act One company, and they were like their own dedicated company of actors. They worked just with each other to do productions, and they were guided by professionals at the festival. And then there was the non-equity company, and we were the actors who were not yet union, who were not yet professional, but we would get plugged into the professional productions in smaller roles, right? So,
and there were plenty of people there at that time who are now like yourself, well known for their talent, right?
That summer was me and Eddie Gathegi. That's where I met him. Jeremy Strong.
Eddie's in the new Superman, right?
Oh yeah.
Jeremy Strong, Succession.
We should have him on the podcast. Jeremy Strong. God, who else was there? I mean, it was
Charlie Day. Wasn't Charlie Day there?
Charlie was not there that year, but he is a Williamstown alum, and I met him through other Williamstown alums. It was again, like, I don't know, things have changed. That was a really long time ago, but it was a really tight-knit alumni community back then. So yeah, I had met Charlie Day through Kate and I, a person who became a friend. Oh yeah, through the Williamstown network, Kate Gersten. That's how I know Kate, actually. Anyway, it was like just chock full of incredibly talented people. And there was one actor in the company there who kind of talked me out of going to grad school. And I don't even
Mhm.
know if I should admit this. Because I want to preface this by saying, like, I really believe in getting as much training as you possibly can. But basically, he sort of convinced me that it was like sort of an education industrial complex and they just wanted your money and you could learn how to act in other ways. And I was like, I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't even
Mhm.
considered that I could get my training in places like these, in places like Chautauqua and Williamstown, and sort of on the ground, on the job. Sorry,
How
go
do you
ahead.
feel about that after having done, like, would you agree with that? And obviously it's a different cocktail for each person. Like some people will excel in different environments or whatever, but like looking back on that advice and with the hindsight you have now, like what would you say about that advice?
It was absolutely the right advice for me. Even just thinking about, like, preparing to go through the process of auditioning and finding the right program for myself, I was
Mhm.
terrified of the debt. I was terrified of the debt, of even thinking about the debt. And I didn't understand how me, with my ambitions of just being a theater actor, would ever survive, under the
Right.
weight of $150,000 of debt. And it was liberating to hear somebody say, like, you don't have to do that, and you can have a career, you can learn your craft, you can and have a career without suffering through
Right.
that, and now that said, are there absolutely things that I still skills that I wish I had and I know that I would have gotten in graduate school? Yes, without question. But again, I can still pursue those things, and
Right.
and it's
But
not like, yeah.
it's the same thing though. It's like in film school, right? They teach you to be, I almost feel like in the back rooms of most of these film schools, they've decided that we want to unlock the artist, right? We want to unlock the artists in these kids in undergrad. And then if they're coming into grad, we want to harness their liberal arts education toward the artists that they can be now. And then they get shot out into the professional world without very many professional skills, right? Because the idea of like making your own film, like you're doing so much shit in a way you'll never do it again. Like if you once you start working professionally, that you have to either unlearn it, you have to unlearn it and then learn a whole new thing. And it's like
Mhm.
in some ways you could argue you're ill-equipped to be a
Mhm.
professional because you're
Mhm.
not necessarily going to step into the professional world making things.
Mhm.
So you could, maybe you go and you step out into the world and you learn the decorum and the politics of set and the protocols and whatnot, you know and then maybe you'll find an opportunity to tell your own story. But then you can see the flip of it where it's like, if you learn that, can you go back to being an artist? It's like, are you better learning
Yeah.
to be an artist, putting an artist's life on pause as you learn how to be a professional, and then hopefully that artistry is there to be tapped into and pulled into this professional, Venn diagram that then allows you to fucking make your shit.
Yeah, but I feel like that's the struggle of a professional life as an artist, regardless, right? It's like you
Hmm.
spend your whole career trying to balance those things out. The business side versus the artistic side. The professionalism and the politics versus your passions and where your heart leads you. It's a constant struggle, or not struggle, but just a constant
Like a,
effort to find that
yeah.
balance. And I don't know, it's like I wouldn't tell anybody else not to go to grad school, but it was a relief for me to consider that there was another possibility,
Mhm.
that was legitimate, legitimate enough for me anyway, right?
Right.
And but yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, listen, you talk about being ill-equipped professionally, like I still feel like, God, I don't learn nothing and none of my education that is useful to me now. Like sometimes I really feel like sometimes I really feel like I'm a very late bloomer and I'm still learning so much stuff and I'm still so, I still feel ill-equipped to handle, the professional side or the artistic side or whatever, all the sides of life, the parenting side, the marriage, there's,
Mhm.
you're learning constantly and you're constantly, you got to be constantly up for the challenge of taking on a new, I don't know, a new task.
So it sounds like what's developing for me as we talk about this is,
Mm,
there's this kind of artist profile that you're falling into en route to, you know, your passing strange life. And then there's
yeah.
probably, I'm assuming, a pivot in that profile of an artist's life as you move into TV and film. So
Yeah.
when you were around this Williamstown time, like, and I think this is good for people listening who like don't know the ins and outs of what an actor goes through. And sure, this might have been a little while ago, but like I think the rhythms are probably similar. What was your artist life in those days en route to getting that passing strange opportunity?
Well, if I wasn't, I feel like I'm talking about this a lot, but I was like really stressed out about money. And so I have to like, I have to, I'm just always in awe, like when I really think about it, of how lucky I was to have found this amazing part-time job, right? So when I graduated Barnard, I got this part-time job at the college in the development, like alumni affairs development office. And that job combined with the fact that I, shared a brownstone in Harlem with four other people, right? So I had relatively little rent. I was able to work like part-time. I was able to work part-time and it was a high enough or enough money for me to survive. So I had this part-time job that was a really, e- I mean, like challenging for my brain, but like not physically demanding office job, right? And it enabled me to save my energy for when I did have an audition, or I was doing a play at night and having to go to,
Mhm.
hold, but for $0 and, or like a Metro card. And, and so I had this amazing job that was not, I didn't have to wait tables and I didn't have to like, I was in a temp situation where it was like, 9 to 5 and I didn't know if I could get away for an audition. My boss, Jane Hollander, may she rest in peace, was incredible. And it was because of her, like I was working there when I got the opportunity to go to Williamstown and all of the opportunities I had to work
But
out of town.
but
Yeah.
I kind of want to get
Oh,
into
sorry.
like
Sorry.
the no 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 because my
What
question
am I
was kind
rambling
of
about?
rambling.
Okay.
Like I want to get into like the day to day of it, right? Because you've
Oh, okay.
mentioned like I worked with development of plays, like what did that look like? How are you meeting the Katori halls? What are you doing when you're developing a play? Are
Yeah.
you working with casting directors so you can do readings? Like what is that actor's life?
Okay. Yeah. So I would meet creative people, creative type, like the playwrights or directors, at these places, Williamstown and Chautauqua and etc. Like, and then they would say, "Hey, I'm doing a reading of this play at New Dramatists. I'm doing a reading of this play at the Lark. Come and join me for this week," right? And so we'd sit down at the table for a week and work on the play, whether it was the playwright leading it or whether it was by the playwright's invitation to me or the director or whatever. And those experiences just kept compounding, right? So then I would be,
Mhm.
if it was the playwright that invited me, now I had a new friend in the director, and so on and so forth. Now, Katori and I went to college together. In fact, she was in Becky Guy's acting class with me, and so that's how we met each other. Can I
And
tell
for
us really
folks
quick?
who don't know, that's P Valley. Katori is the creator and showrunner on P Valley, but also
Right,
did Hurt Village, a great play at the Signature,
sure. The
Mountaintop,
Mountaintop, mhm.
and other great works.
Hot Wing King. Hot Wing King? Did I say that right? Yes, Hot Wing. Yeah, terrific playwright. Terrific playwright. Oh, Our Lady of Chubeo. So, and then, these people, all new people, they would come and see the reading, that we had been working on, the workshop presentation of, and you just sort of keep collecting people and your community grows bigger and bigger. And then next week you're doing this reading for a week, for 5 days. And then, in a few weeks you're doing that thing. And then this one's for producers. And so you just sort of
So
keep.
you're building a presence as an actor who is available to work for free, but passionate and brings talent to these early kind of beginnings of new works.
Exactly. But you're right though, too. I did also reach out to casting directors and I was a reader for auditions so I could learn, that side of the game, the casting, when I wasn't auditioning for projects of the size or scope of that I was reading for, I could learn by what was happening in the room, by what the actors were bringing. That was talk about grad school. Like I learned a lot sitting in them rooms.
Right.
And listening to those conversations, which, I'm discreet, so I won't.
It's kind of like the shadowing all that shadowing I did. Right. So, all right. So then how did, and then we'll move past this, but I love kind of this beginning journey. How did the opportunity for Passing Strange come to you? Audition? Like, was it a normal audition for you? Was it oh, wow, I got this opportunity to audition for this thing?
God, I can't. It was definitely an audition, and I'm not sure how it came about. I just remember seeing the production. I saw the production. It had been at the Public Theater first. Well, I think it was at Berkeley Rec first, and then came to the Public Theater in New York, and I saw it, and I was straight up like, why am I not in this? Like, this is me. This is the material that I need to be doing. Like, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. And then when it came to Broadway, I can't remember how the audition came about. I can't honestly remember if I somehow pursued it or if I knew somebody or what, but the audition came along and I remember my sister. I worked on it with my sister and she was like, you could actually get this, which at the time I was like, is that a compliment? What a strange thing to say, but it felt like, oh, wow, this is, I don't know. It felt all very fortuitous and kind of magical. And I booked it. Crazy.
So then you booked it. You did go up one night, right? You got to get your proper Broadway debut.
I went on several times, actually.
Okay. Which of the 6 roles was the first one that you did?
Edwina, Mariana, and Sudabe. So they each of the actresses played 3 characters. And so I went on for the track that was Edwina, Mariana, Sudabe for Deidre Aziza. And I went on for a couple of times. And bless her, she gave me advance notice one of the times. So I actually got to invite people. And, my family flew in and everything. And it was, I at the time was like, I'm never getting married. This is my wedding. Like, this is what I need people to come to. My Broadway debut. So it was incredibly special. It was a long time ago. Way pre-Pete. And so it was incredible. I mean, it was like, I felt like fucking rock star. It was so awesome. Yeah.
So then you leave that play, it concludes its run, and you say, all right, what's next? Time to conquer television. No? Did you say that?
No, that is what I said. I was like, I did. I became ambitious. It was after that I was like, wow, I've done, all the things that my little Milwaukee, childhood heart dreamed of doing. I've originated roles in plays. I've played characters that were written for me, with me in mind. I've worked at the great theaters in this country all over the place. And now I've been on Broadway and like, I can do this. Let's go. And I very quickly reached a very frustrating plateau. And I just like I couldn't get through the door. Like I was not on the radar or,
What is
you
that? What
know,
does that not getting through the door look like? Right. Like, because I know for myself, like not getting through the door was like, you know, 50 to 75, 85, $100 festival fees 80 times. You know what I mean? Like
mhm.
meetings with potential producers 50 times. That didn't like what did not getting through the door look like for you at that moment?
Well, it would be like, you know, Gossip Girl was shooting in New York at the time. Law and Order. Listen, Law and Order. Every New York actor has been on Law and Order. There were like 17 Law and Orders going at the time. And I could not get an audition for any of those shows. And at the time, those were things that all of my peers, all of the
Right.
Williamstown homies and Chicago homies, everybody like that's how they were getting their first credits. And I
How they
couldn't even,
kept money in their pocket.
yeah. I was doing a lot of commercials. And that's how I kept money in my pocket, and that was good money back then. And but I couldn't break through to, like, opportunities to build up my reel, you know? And just also play characters because ultimately that's what I always sort of envisioned for my career was that
Mhm.
I would be a character actor. I'd drop in here and there, and I'd hit them with a dope guest star, guest arc, and change the whole plot and shake everything up and be out, you know? And because that's what the actors in New York around me, that's what they did, you know?
Right.
We were all journey people actors, the people in my peer group and above, you know? Listen, you watch a Tony Awards on Sunday night and Monday morning see a Tony winner sitting in the waiting room at Beth Melsky's casting office. She was one of the big commercial casting directors, and so we were all
Right.
like, you know, that was just the way of things at the time. It was like we were all just hustling for awesome opportunities to do our artistry, and I couldn't get in the door to the next level of like, you know, of a chance to do something on screen or something, you know, a little shinier. And more than that, that made money, you know, that
Right.
it would enable me to have a you know, a lifestyle I could sustain in New York.
So what was the first door that opened?
My management. So there was a change in my management team, and I decided to go with the person on the team who I saw as being like really hungry and ambitious, even though I didn't
Right.
really like. I don't know. I don't even know if we really clicked, but I thought like, you know, maybe I don't need to be with the person who's like massaging my back and like telling me how fantastic I am. Maybe I just need to be with the person who's like focused on growing. And so I went with that side of the team as they split up, and she brought on somebody who had been in casting uh for years, and he got me right together. He was just like, listen, I'm watching your tapes, and I don't think that you're prepared enough. I don't think you have your look together. I don't know, all this stuff. And I mean, I kind of skipped over I jumped over a big part, which was that I did quit acting. I did become so frustrated that I quit acting and moved to Spain. And then I came back, and I came back with this attitude of like, oh, I just love myself and I'm an artist no matter what. Nobody can take my artistry away. And I don't have to
Hmm.
conflate my commercial value with my value as a human being and as an artist. And then here he was going like, you know, just like running
Put
down
these
this
heels
checklist.
on.
Yeah, exactly. But I was also at the time where we're just like, all right, listen, if I'm gonna do this again, I better try something new, right? I'm with this new
Right.
teammate, you know, they've got this new approach, and what I was doing before wasn't working. So I'm
Right.
going
And
to try
it's a
this.
great point. It like, you know, the fact that you even had that on your team is a blessing. because like I'm doing a conversation with the African American Steering Committee at the DGA in a week or so, and or it may actually have happened by the time we air this. I think it will have. But I'm like, I want these two agents to share with these DGA members what is the profile of the ideal client for you. You know what I mean? Like, how do you rock out and do your job? What is it that they need to do in the room? Because, our version of the audition is being in a room and how you present yourself. And a lot of times they just give you a time to go show up, just like you get an audition time. Nobody says like, here's what you should do in your first 2 minutes when you
Oh my
fucking walk
God.
in.
Yes.
Here's like a technique, like, look at one eye, like Michael Caine or whatever, but the video camera version of that. Like, there's just little things you can do to give yourself a higher level of success, but people just are expecting like the cream to rise to the top, and
I didn't even know
that's
what a
not the case.
general was when I was like, for the
Right.
first couple of years I was like, what? I don't like, what am I supposed to be doing? And
Right.
yes. So sorry to yes.
Yeah, no. So that's
Yeah.
great. So you had this addition to the team. Now you've got a little bit more ammunition when you go out into these meetings. And ammunition may sound aggressive, but I mean, we talk all the time. I think everything's war. Like, and so you, how does that pan out? What fruit does that bear? Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I had that meeting with the members of my new management team. I used to know what it was exactly about how many auditions I had. Like, suddenly the pilot season kicked off for me and I was getting pilot auditions for the first time. Really, it was like my first pilot season. I booked a pilot within 10 days after that meeting.
And that
First
was
pilot.
Emily Owens?
That was Emily Owens. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was literally like, you got all the ingredients. You just need to sharpen it up. You need to pull it together and take out the stuff you don't need and add this other thing that you're undervaluing and go do it. You got it. Go do it. And I literally booked a pilot within 10 days.
Right. Okay, so that show goes, Emily Owens. Go
Hold
ahead.
on. But by the way,
Don't let me cut you off. Hop on in.
No, I also want to say, like, yes, it was within 10 days, but it was also because I had spent at that point, God, that was like, I'd finished college 7 years before that. So I had been like on the grind for a nice long time. And I had this massive toolbox that I just didn't know when to deploy the tools and how, and what were the most important things. And so, like, I had definitely gotten my, grad school in the streets per the plan, but I just needed, I needed help. I needed somebody to help me refine everything. And I think that has been true throughout my career. It's like you reach this point where you're like, cool, I've accumulated all these skills and knowledge and community and network and all of that stuff. Somebody help me figure out how to work with this. I constantly need to, some sort of like, life coaching at various transitional stages. That's just how I am. But yeah,
we all do. So, Emily Owens.
Oh yeah.
You do the pilot. It goes one season.
Yeah, one season.
And then I imagine that feels like I've made it to, oh my God, I guess I didn't, or I don't know how it felt. How did that feel?
It felt okay. It was still incredibly exciting. I still felt like I had, won the lottery just being up there. I learned so much. It was such a wonderful group of people. We had a great time with one another. It was, it was an incredible experience. I made some of my best friends to this day doing that show. And so when it ended, it just kind of felt like okay, this is still just the beginning. I still felt very optimistic. It's like, all right, I don't expect lots of shows at that point, or at that time, people were still making tons and tons of pilots, and that happened all the time. Pilots would
Right.
not get picked up. That was totally the norm. Like for us to get 13 episodes was not the norm. So it still
Right.
felt like a
Right.
huge win, a huge triumph. And it was just like, all right, back on that grind. And now I'll try LA, right? Because now I have some cred to get me out there. I wasn't going to leave behind the career that I had put, all that legwork into in New York to like pick up and move to LA. But now I had this thing in my back pocket that gave me what I felt was, entree into things that happen in this town. So I used
Mhm.
it, and I came here. So we wrapped Emily Owens, I guess, that December, and I came out for the spring. Yeah, I came out for that pilot season, and I guess I didn't book anything. I can't remember. No, I guess not. And then I went and did a play over the summer. Came back in the fall, started booking some episodic stuff here in LA, and by the end of the spring, I had booked Grey's Anatomy.
So earlier you said that you were hoping that your career would be one where you would get to play character actors
Mm.
and you'd be able to come in and shake up a narrative or a season or a storyline or whatever and be out.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that's what you did with your character in Scandal? And was that helpful in the road to booking Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah. Yeah, Scandal was so fun because it was just like this it started out, it was just this one little scene, and it was just so rich in character. Like you could do anything with this woman. She was like mysterious and sexy, and there were all these just like little, cues about backstory. And so I just let my imagination run wild, and it was such a fun little character exercise. And it absolutely connected to my booking Grey's Anatomy because I had a ball with that, scene, that moment on Scandal. The writer on set happened to be somebody that I had gone to college with, Rama Muhammad. And she was able to report back to Shonda that I was not an asshole. I fulfilled the no assholes policy. And they liked that moment enough to bring me back for another to like finish out that storyline for that character. She got this.
So how many episodes did you do with that character?
Just two.
Okay.
She comes back to sort of finish her job, and in doing so, she gets herself into trouble and gets just very sadly killed. And so it was exactly that. It was exactly sort of like what I imagined. Yeah, I would be doing, right? Like come in here, do this on this sexy little show, and then go over on that show and do something completely different and just play, be in a lot of different sandboxes and have a lot of fun and be moving here to there. And then the opportunity came to audition for Grey's because, Shonda had seen my work on Scandal and vetted me, and the opportunity or the role Maggie Pierce came along, which I didn't know I was auditioning for. I thought I was just auditioning for like a recurring guest doctor. And of course they knew that it was Maggie Pierce and Meredith Grey's sister. And I booked it. I had to, Scandal was absolutely kind of like not a testing ground, but that's where they discovered that they had somebody who could play the role.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Asher, director of television shows like Big Mood and High Potential. You're watching Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon.
Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook, is Pete Chatmon's book from Michael Weezy Productions. The reviews are in. Greg Berlanti says, "There's a reason why everyone who works with Pete falls in love with his work. The lessons he imparts here are invaluable. Do yourself a favor and read it cover to cover." From Sarah Gamble, "Pete's sharing gold nuggets that will spare you a ton of wasted time and help you channel your drive, talent, and ambition in the most productive way." And from Jesse Williams, This business has everything to do with preparation and expectations. Transitions grounds lessons in reality while empowering our artistry to run free. Not an easy balance to execute. Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook is available on Amazon and anywhere else you get your books. Don't forget about your mom and pop shops, people.
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is sponsored by the good folks at Scriptation. Scriptation is the Emmy Award-winning app for production that allows you to mark up scripts, transfer notes, generate breakdowns, and so much more. Personally, I use Scriptation daily on every production that I am involved with. While directing episode 106 of NCIS Origins, I took advantage of Scriptation's photo feature to organize my blocking for the episode's main set piece. We turned a restaurant with one entry point into a multi-level club with private rooms and back alleys, and sharing the photos in my script helped my department heads bring it to life. This is just one of the ways I use the incredible features inside of Scriptation. Go to scriptation.com/Pete to get an exclusive 20% off Scriptation's premium toolkit, Scriptation Industry Pro.
So how many episodes did you do of Grace?
Oh,
I can probably tell you if you don't.
yeah,
if you don't
tell
know
me.
offhand.
It's definitely at least 200. It was a lot.
Definitely at least 200. You say. Keep talking. I'm searching IMDb and I'm pulling it up while you talk.
Yeah, gosh, definitely. I mean, it had to be 200. I think it might have been exactly 200.
All right.
I definitely knew at the time that I left the show, and now I can't remember.
Well, look at this. Okay, for some reason, they have Dr. Maggie Pierce, 201 episodes, and then they have Dr. Maggie Pierce, 1 episode. So let's say 202. First, I don't know, maybe the credits got jammed up, or somebody, maybe there's like a doctor, or there's a space that somebody put, and then the name got, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people are 150 years old on Social Security, that kind of thing. But yeah, so you are absolutely correct. And so over all of that time, like tell me like what were your like main takeaways as an actor, having done something, having played a character 200 times?
Yeah. I think early on, I realized, oh, this series regular thing is really a challenge that I had not been prepared for in my work, in my acting work up to that, right? When you do a play or even a film, you know the beginning, middle, and end of what happens to your character. And everybody doesn't necessarily work this way, but I use the text to sort of inform back to front, middle to back, how I move throughout the storytelling, how I want to reveal character, tease, what's to come, etc. And that is not possible in the arc of creating a series regular character. It's ongoing, and so, figuring out what is character if you don't know what's going to happen, how they change, what the arc is in the beginning it's a really different challenge.
Is there some, like, I don't know, maybe this is just applying rose-colored glasses to the reality of the job, but is there some like opportunity in that, in the sense of like, well, it's kind of like real life, you know what I mean? Like where you don't know. So like, obviously they can jam you up because you can create a whole backstory and then have that shit fucking destroyed where you're like, oh, really? Like I've been playing it this way. But within the yardstick or the framework that you have, until you don't have it, like is that a muscle or a skill that's worth developing?
Totally. I think you articulated it very well. It's really an exercise in like being very willing to let go of things, to embrace them fully, go hard while you got them, and then let them go when the time
Right.
comes to let them go. And because you need that, obviously, like, if
Right.
you make a vocal choice about your character or a physical choice about your character, and then you find out that they're in fact, whatever. I'm having a hard time coming up with an example, but like you find out that they're, oh my God, I didn't know my character was from Boston. I was like, I worked on a Bostonian accent, but now here I am. I've been doing my
But
regular voice this whole time. Uh,
right.
you don't have
Right.
to, but
Right.
I didn't have to. But that was one of the things. It's like, well, now we just got to embrace that this is what she sounds like, and now I have to make up a story about why it is she is this way, and what her parents, how she was raised, and that, right? Like the environment. And so that's like a very simple element to it. But like
Right.
it's really figuring out, outside of plot and story and text and exactly what's on the page, what is the essential nature of this person, right? And so,
Mhm.
what sort of drives and motivates them, regardless of whether you find out that they have a long lost sister,
What
eh,
what would you say you learned about what is the essential nature of, and in this case, broadcast TV, right? Because
mm,
that's like, even as you learn things about the character, you then have to take that and then place it into the framework of like, okay, but this is broadcast TV. So they're gonna be there's like, it's like a second level of like rules to apply. Like for me, like as a quick thought, like I think about like, in streaming and in cable, you don't have act outs often, right?
mhm,
But and in an act out, I know that I want to try and do something with the camera that is interesting and propels the story to commercial with the
yeah,
with the camera move and the blocking. And I know I have to do that if I want to do a good job, right? But
right,
like also like I can also take that as much as that's like a sandbox of clay, and I can then take that to like, you know, like I remember like doing You, and they would often have these like fade to blacks. Well, the fade to blacks were the act outs, right? They
mhm,
just weren't like identified as such.
mhm,
So, like, or there's like little things you can do where you're like, okay, I need to communicate this moment, which has like maybe more emotional value than has been earned, maybe quite honestly. But if I
mhm.
do this with the camera, I can close the gap. So, like, what kind of things did you learn as an actor in particular with like broadcasting?
I mean, you know, uh, I learned so much when you came to direct, like when you like came into my life, came to direct the show, like, watching you. But and so I'll get to that. But like, you're absolutely right. I mean, I did. I think there was like I said, I'm a late bloomer. Like sometimes I'm a little slow, late to the party, whatever. But I remember a day that I was shooting something. I don't need to get into the specifics because I frankly can't remember them. But I just remember that like what whatever was happening in the scene that I was shooting, I was still carrying over my character, like the emotional quality of what had happened in the last episode to my character, which was something heavy and something sad and something contemplative. And I wanted that to be part of the story of what happened to her in this next episode, or of how she processed it, went through it, right? Like, I didn't want to leave that behind just because there's a new week. It's
Right,
like she's still
right.
Maggie Pierce, she still went through something. But I remember one day, like Kevin McKidd, because they were trying to get me to, keep it lighthearted. Whatever I was talking about, I was referencing the heavy, sad thing that had happened, and they wanted it to be funny. And I was like, it's not funny to me. To Maggie,
Right,
it's not
right.
funny. I remember saying like it was humiliating, and it was, whatever. And Kevin McKidd was like, yeah, but it's the first act. The
Right.
show's funny. The show's fast and funny in the first act. And I remember being like, "Oh." I had to compromise my artistry. But eventually I learned how to receive that information as like, okay, you don't compromise your artistry at all. In fact, you figure out a way. That's tone and style, right? You figure out a way for it to still be true in the context of a show that is a dramedy, in a show that is a romantic comedy, right? It's
Right.
still true that this sad and heavy thing happened to her. Now, make that, like, have that be an underlying element
Right.
in a way that not in the way that you were planning on it. Find a new way, right? Find a way
Right.
that works for this tone and style. And you don't have to like throw it out the window or make it, sometimes, well, I shouldn't even admit this, but like sometimes I feel like, oh, they don't care about my character. They don't care. Like, oh, I'm just here in service to these other just making self-pitying melodrama for a temporary period. And then, I understand when it's time to go on set and the cameras are rolling to like do the story, right? Do the
the thing.
story.
Yeah.
And then you watch the episode and you're like, oh, I get it. That's
Yeah.
fine. No, it works better that way. And so back to like learning from you, I remember you actually pointed that out to me once. I was like, real talk, give me some real feedback about how, because I think it was just a time when I was struggling, I don't know, feeling some kind of artistic stagnation or just professional or whatever. But I was like, help, and you're like, I think sometimes you struggle with really embracing the tone and style of the show. And I think hearing it from an outsider was very you weren't an outsider, you were there on the set. You were like, I was talking about what we were working through in the episode that you were shooting. But yeah, I think that was like, oh gosh, I do struggle with that because I thought I had a handle on that. And I seem to still be struggling with it. So that was that, yeah.
That's the journey on
part of
everything
it.
though too. Like I find like I'm doing that on every show. I'm like, day one on any set, I spend most of day one trying to download the tone and style of the show. You know what I mean? Like some of it, I'm not gonna lie. Like I'll like watch a take and then I'm like, all right, did they seem cool with that? Because like, like if that's in the pocket and there's no eyebrows raised or no notes, okay, cool. Go again. Let me see if the actor does something different. Go again. Let me see if the actor does something different. And I'm trying to get the tone and style of the show before I begin to find myself in it, because I need to understand what I'm finding myself in.
Yeah.
And then it's a really cool exercise to come in there and be like, oh, okay, so this one is really, tongue in cheek, or boom, it can turn at any moment to be dramatic or comedic. The levity or the weight is there. And then it's like, okay, let me like hardwire myself for the next 2 weeks to be able to really play in that world. Because the worst thing you want to have happen is, be in the wrong fucking movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if I'm directing the wrong scene, the wrong version of the scene, no one will appreciate how well I executed the wrong version of the scene. They're gonna be like, he doesn't get it, right? So it is a bit of a superpower to develop, to know how to like come in and drive home, to land the plane, wherever it needs to go.
Do you ever feel like after day one, like, okay, that was kind of tenuous all day, I don't actually know? Like, do you ever feel like, have you ever gotten through a whole process and been like, I'm not really sure if I have a handle on this?
No, I can say that I've gotten through and been like, maybe this ain't for me, but I
did what they do.
I can see what it is, and I'm going to give my all to give them what they need. And then where I think I can find a way to do something, offer something that might move the needle. And then you watch the what airs and you're like, oh, they kept that. Okay, so I wasn't off. And then other times you're like, damn, they ain't touched that. So you're just like, cool, and you're learning. But much of the job is really, in an interesting way, I guess, I'm more, this sounds pompous, but like I'm more coach than player, right? but but it sounds like to me the actor in this player analogy also needs to be able to coach themselves.
Yes. I think that's that you really put your finger on something there. I think something that, when you're being, at least in my training background, you're really encouraged to just really not think about what it looks like and not have a director's eye on what you're doing. Really come from an internal sense of truth and an internal motor, right, moving you. And it was really difficult for me. And I wonder if think I'm better at it now. I think, you know what? It's like a dance. It's like sometimes I have a really, really great balance of like, I know I'm moving authentically and I have a sense of what this looks like and whether it works, whether it's telling the story, right? And other times I'm like a little preoccupied with what it looks like. And other times I'm not preoccupied enough with what it looks like, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
yeah, it's that coach player thing that I think that is absolutely one of the takeaways of having worked on that show for so long is that like you have to be able to learn that dance, You don't want to feel or certainly come across in your performance as self-conscious, but you have to be kind of self-conscious. You have to be
Mhm.
self-aware and
You have
that
to turn it on
feels
and off in ways that people behind the camera don't.
right.
But it does sound
Right.
like to be able to say, oh, well, what's the tone here? And then to reshape what you're doing, that's the coach player dynamic. So it's already part of the actor's toolkit, right? Like to be able to say, like, what I just did was not in the sandbox of the tone, and then to adjust is coaching oneself, right?
Mhm.
And then or to be in a scene with an actor and be like, this is really your scene. So to be
Yes.
aware what I
Right.
need to give you to do your thing is also coach player. But once you have that diagnosis, then you have to put the coach at the end of the bench and tie your jersey tight. You know what I mean? Tie your drawstrings tight and only be a player until you realize that maybe something's off.
Yeah, completely. That
I mean, it's just like with our daughter. There's gonna be things where it's like, your parents when you're growing up, they say, "Do as I say, not as I do." And now I'm like, yeah, that shit true to motherfucker. Like
oh my God.
I can't not raise you. You know what I mean? Like, and I might be at the point where having lived a life and having the ability to and like understand nuance and make a decision, I don't need to be black and white with it. But you don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Right. Right.
Now, of those 202 episodes, you saw a lot of directors. If I would have thought about this, I would have gone through your IMDb with a fine-tooth comb and probably identified that, you worked with 44 directors. Do you think
Right.
it's at least 40 over those 200?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
probably fair,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not going to give you a number, but multiple iterations from your point of view of like, what were the things that you saw that you were like, this is a good director? And then what were the things you saw that made you say, it's going to be a long 8 days?
I'm very sensitive to vibes. And so, very often my first day on set would not be the first day of
Mm,
the episode, right? So the first thing to peep was how the crew felt,
mm,
the attitude on the set.
right.
And I'd be like, "What's going on here?" What? What's the problem? Like, what is the problem? Is it, "Oh, no, we don't like the director." So, like and then I
Right.
would try
Right.
to look, I always wanna give w w space to have my own experience of anybody, regardless of what I'm told about
Mm,
them in advance. Um And so I'm always like, I try to keep an open attitude, and it would usually reveal itself to me pretty quickly why the crew felt, it was like a communication style that either felt a little like indecisive. That I think that really agitated folks. If it seemed
Okay.
like a little too lackadaisical, it'd be like, oh boy. It's just like child rearing. Like kids need structure. You gotta
Right.
give them a sense of structure. You gotta give them a sense of like somebody's hands are on the
Well, when
steering wheel
you
here.
see indecisive, you just know that everything's about to take longer than it needs to,
Right.
and you're going to be doing a whole lot of shit that you don't need to
You
do.
don't need to do,
Whether
right.
it's a take or the like this just happened on Friday. We were shooting, and we called the Grace, and I wanted to get one more shot. I had like a one direction scene with three people, like two in the background, one in the foreground, and he's talking toward camera, and I was like, oh man, I want to get one additional shot where I push in to the actor, but I couldn't do it because we called Grace, and there was not enough time. There would not have been enough time to change the lens, reset the crane, et cetera, et cetera. So like this was not like a wasteful shot, but like, I'm just making the analogy of like when you're doing this shot, you don't need that shot, you don't need, and they take 20 minutes to set up, 4 minutes to roll normally, but maybe 8 because you're doing extra takes. Like people are
Mhm.
just feeling the like, pointlessness of their life, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody likes to get into a flow, right? Everybody
Yeah,
wants to feel like, okay, we're rolling, the energy is moving forward. It's like everybody works better in that situation, right? So it's like,
yeah.
I so I don't- this is kind of the other sort of red flag for me would be like, okay, what happened? How come after, lighting for 15 minutes or whatever, I'm now standing on my mark for another 15 minutes? Like I'm ready to go. Right? Like how come now we're relighting with me here? And what has happened in the communication? What has happened? But like what are, and it just people, the tension would increase. People are trying to hurry. People are feeling, it's a vibe where things just don't quite feel organized, and
Mhm.
like the ship is not, nobody's got their hands on the wheel. Any
Is there
indications of that would be like, oh, make me worried a little bit.
so indecisiveness is one. Is there any
Mhm.
like, and
Which,
I'm
by
and
the
I'm
way, is why I know I could not be a director, because I cannot make a decision. As you well know, I struggle to make decisions without considering every possible factor and outcome and option. So that's why I don't belong behind the
yeah.
camera doing that. Anyway, continue.
I love I don't know. I know that I learned so much when like I was telling this to somebody on set. I was like, when I was shadowing, like one of the things I would do probably the most, like in addition to like comparing my shot to the shots that were being done on the episode, like if I any turn of phrase that I heard that was like, you know, seem to get a good response from people or like keep things moving or like a good way to deal with like, a challenging person. I was writing it down because I was like, man, I want to have that in my back pocket. Even so far as like, I mean, it's basic, but I remember like on shadowing on Blackish, when you would do the Stevens and Leto scenes at the office, I mean, it was basically like Def Comedy Jam, right? Like until like camera roll, like it was Def Comedy Jam. And I remember maybe it must have been Linda Mendoza, but she would just yell, "Here we go," and cut through it, action, yelling, and then boom, right into the scene. And I was like, here we go. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna say here we go. You know what I mean? Because I can't
Yeah.
just yell action. Like I need the here we go to like ramp up into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Without killing
so
the vibe, right?
without killing the vibe.
Yeah.
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 Without being like, shut up.
Yeah.
So what were a couple things in the same kind of director we're talking about, like that maybe like phrases or things said to you where you were like, man, that was like you lost me with this approach or with this communication?
I had a director tell me once, "You're overthinking it." And that may have been true, but it was the wrong thing to say to me. It just
Hmm.
was like, it was like, again, when somebody is deeply considering something because they care about it, telling them that they're overthinking it seems a little bit invalidating. And, I would say that, like, that was sort of my experience with that director was like, the actors are just a nuisance. Like, I just want to get my shots and get out of here. And the crew loves me. Ha ha.
Hmm.
We're all having a great time. Get these people off my set, and
Right.
get these actor people. But can I tell you something that was actually really lovely? Or can we switch to the positive?
Yeah. So before we do, I
Yeah.
had something pop into my mind. How do you and how did you feel about the no throw it away?
In my commercial background, I heard that so many times. I knew how to metabolize that note. I had a lot of practice because, on a commercial set, like, you're fucking taking something out of a box for Staples. Like, they're not really trying to get into the nuances of your acting choices, right? So
Right.
that's your job. You just take it in hand and you just, I don't know. I never really felt that insulted by that. I get why people do, and
Mhm.
but I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of ways to be offensive, honestly. Like, it depends on the moment in the scene and what the actor needs. There's a lot of ways to say the wrong thing, and I think that as the actor, you have to be able to, like, translate. As much as the directors are trying to translate, and you have to go into it with the attitude that, like, everybody is trying to,
Mhm.
you know no one here is trying to insult you, okay? Like, if you need further explication of what
Usually.
throw it me. Usually, yeah, usually.
Yeah.
That the guy who told me I was overthinking it, I was like, "Oh, I see you." Anyway, but yeah, like, you have to go into it with the attitude that, like, just stay open and ask for clarity if that's not enough, and otherwise, reach into your toolbox and figure it out, Like, figure it out. I do think that that is one of my great strengths as an actor was that, coming up to workshopping original, or new plays was that was your job in the room is to, like, make this on the page work as
Mhm.
best you can in order to reveal that it does not work to the playwright, right? You
Right.
have to
Right.
do your
Right.
best to make this work so they can find out if it needs changes, right? And you have to use your imagination. You have to use everything that you can, and you got to believe in it enough to,
Mhm.
you can't, like, judge it, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that that is I do think that that's what I try to bring to my, collaborative relationships everywhere is a sense of, like, okay, let's try to make this work. And if I have a question, which I usually often have a lot of questions, it is still in the spirit of, like, I just want to understand what this is so that I can do it. I can fully commit, to this before I
Mhm.
ask if it's possible that, this that we consider something else, or in my take of it or whatever. I do like to approach from a sense of, like, I want to execute what this is. I want us together to do the best we can at this right here. And that, that direction that you gave me, I want to do that. So tell me what you mean, right? I don't get throw it away. Can you tell me what you mean by that? Like,
Mhm.
I try to, right? I really try to give the benefit of the doubt, I think.
Well, go to what you were going to say about the what you've seen from the you know best directors that have come through the show.
One of my favorite moments with the director was with Vic Mahoney. She there was a moment where in a, like, it was early days of, like, a blossoming relationship for my character, and she gave me the direction like just like smell him, before you say the line, like let the sensation of like being in the space just like do what it does. And it was just, I loved that sensory activation. And I thought it was like a fun thing to play with, and it did activate something in my imagination and hopefully my performance. But I also just it was also such a signal that like we could take everything else for granted. It's not about the line reading, it's not about this or that. It's really about like, again, like accessing the essential nature of this person, like really bring out, you know, bring out the ephemeral, bring out the thing that you don't know what it's going to look like, right? Just like do it. Do the act that gives our eyes something to wonder about, and that was really an inspiring direction from her.
Any more to add to that, or just that?
I don't know. Oh, other amazing. I mean, I had so many. Oh man, one of my favorite scenes was with Debbie. It's like she read my mind about what I wanted to do in a scene. You know how it is on a TV set. Like if you don't ask for the props in advance, they don't always like have them available to you, on the day. And I kind of took for granted that they would, but on the day it occurred to me like, oh my God, this is a bathroom scene and I want to be doing this and this and this. Maybe I should have talked to them about it beforehand so that I could, because I think it would make it really interesting. And it was like Debbie, because it wasn't on the page what I had in mind to do, the activity. And it was like Debbie had read my mind. She was like, girl, you gonna do this? I was like, oh my God, and it was all set and available. And it was such a funny, fun, activated moment that was just pure, and it just like kind of tumbled out of us in a very just organic, super spontaneous way. It was really, really exciting. And I love that Debbie had put, again, it just feels like, yeah, you really get this character. You really get, my approach to her, and we both agree what would make the scene great. And that was really cool. I mean, I had a ton of experiences like that on the show over the years. And it became very empowering to have figured out that coach player dynamic for myself and know which scenes I wanted to, collaborate as a coach with the director on in advance or on the day of, and like really be thoughtful about my communication and getting my needs met and how I would handle it if I didn't get those needs met, and having other options. And I think understanding how directors prepared, which I didn't for the first many years that I was on the show until, you came, like, I didn't really know what happened with pre-production, that like so many things have been considered, and ways of telling the story were considered before we got there. Like the work wasn't all, left on our shoulders. The acting they had been thought and considered and set us up for success, yeah.
So when did you leave the show? What year was that? Do you recall?
Oh my God.
With COVID
I
and
don't
the
know.
strike, it could have been last year, it could have been 5 years ago. But it's
Was the baby
been,
1? It was after she turned 1.
so would that have been
So that would have
2022
been so that would have been
or 2023?
2023. It was 2023
Okay.
then. Yeah.
So we're coming up on 2 years. What are you excited about in the future? Now it's like we've had the kind of, let's just say, if I could put your life in chapters from our conversation, there's like young Milwaukee artist up until Broadway premiere. There's coming off of Broadway to being on one of the biggest shows in the world. That's like, act 2. And this can be a 6-act play, though I'm not, rounding the corner here.
Long.
Act 3 post Grays? Like, what are you envisioning for this time ahead? And like, what are your goals and, the new vision board for you?
Yeah, I post grades, it's been a really amazing time because I the thing about grades was that it was really hard to, because of the schedule, the amount of commitment to that show. It was really, I was so used to always being with new collaborators all the time. And of course on grades we got new writers, new directors, and everybody all the time, but it was still in the context of that show and that character for me, that world. And so, being sort of out again and having the opportunity to connect with so many new artists and play with, new characters has been really so fulfilling. It's like I still want to, have that character actor career and jump around and play in a lot of sandboxes and make really great characters that people resonate with and want to spend time with. And so yeah, so I envision that for myself in theater, TV, and film. As you all know, we were in New York last fall, so I could do a play by my artistic soul sister Dominique Morisseau, an incredible play with this a character that I just absolutely loved and adored and held like I just care for her so much, and I really 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 understand her, and that was incredibly fulfilling. And the thing about a play is that when it's over, it is over. Like it's so over. Like TV, you shoot it, and then it has another life when it airs, and then it has another life when
Yeah.
that person watches it, 6 months from now, and it keeps sort of like coming back, and plays are just like over, and they live in people's memories, and sometimes people will say things to you, but nobody else gets to experience it again, and that is so like magical, that the ephemeral nature of that. But I so I loved doing that, and I'm eager to get back to something that has just like a little bit longer, just a little bit more ripples in the pool, for me to be able to experience it selfishly, but also for other to reach more people. And that was the amazing thing about being on grades for so long, is like the reach of that show is unreal. So many countries. So, I won an Emmy and a Tony, and I'll take an Oscar if you got one. Well, and I just I I look forward to bringing, my very earnest and, sometimes earnest, sometimes extremely goofy perspective to the next collaborator that meets me, because I do feel like this is that time in life where you have to be like, oh God. I mean, I don't know, it's your whole life, but I really have to be like, I really have something that nobody else has that this project really needs. And if it wasn't for me, then they really needed that other artist, So, and I look forward to just finding those magical matches.
If you could have 3 words you would tell your younger self, what would they be? Or 3 like, traits or characteristics or things to keep in mind as that journey begins leaving Milwaukee.
I would say worry less about what people think of you when it is in
Trying to put that
conflict
into
with.
one word.
Oh, one
I'm
word?
like, I'm like, what is that in one word? That is,
Oh, sorry. I'm not
uh,
listening. I wasn't listening very well. Okay,
that
okay,
would
okay.
be,
That would
I'll take the
be
challenge. We can come up with that together. What is that? Worry less. Be steadfast. I don't know if that's it.
unfuckwittable. How about that?
Okay. There we go.
I mean, confidence and No, let me get rid of confidence because I feel like that goes with unfuckable. I would say, yeah, fearless and open-hearted.
I feel like
That's what
fearless also falls into unfuckwittable.
unfuckwittable. Okay, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
quite a
But
quite a
open-hearted
bucket
for
for
sure.
many.
I
Okay,
know that's why it's
so
so good. Okay, so
unfuckwittable while remaining open-hearted.
and yeah, unfuckwittable while remaining open-hearted. And sorry, this is dead air on your podcast. I apologize.
Okay. I like that. It's often a dichotomy or trichotomy, of yin and yang. So be unfuckwittable while remaining open-hearted and being flexible. That's how you do it. All right. Well, thank you, baby. I appreciate you. Thank you for sitting down with the podcast after
Thanks,
5.5 seasons. Episode, I don't know, 76 maybe. But
I didn't want everybody to
you
find
know.
out what a dork I am. You put me on blast now, so.
No. All right. Well, look, give that baby a hug when she
You're
wakes
welcome.
up from that. I'll see you soon.
All right. Okay.
What's up, people? This is Pete Chapman. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter via @PeteChapman. Follow the pod on IG via @Let'sShootWithPeteChapman and hit up our mailbag with questions, suggestions, or hey, donations if you're feeling like it via let'sshootwithPeteChapman@gmail.com. And just in case you need to know how to spell it, that's Pete with the last name CHATMON. Let's Shoot with Pete Chapman is produced and edited by the multi-talented cut creator Tristan Nash, assistant produced by the young mogul Jada George, and features the wonderfully gifted Kelly McCreary as our announcer. It's written by yours truly, but I mostly come up with these questions on the fly, which you've probably noticed. Go ahead and get your podcast swag via PeteChapman.com and leave a review on iTunes if so inclined. That shit matters. Let's Shoot with Pete Chapman is sponsored by Scriptation. Scriptation makes it easy to go paperless on set, increase your productivity, and save hours of time. Let's Shoot listeners get a special discount on Scriptation Industry Pro. Go to scriptation.com/Pete to learn more.
All right. Thanks for listening, y'all. Tune in next week for our interview with Sasha Penn, screenwriter, showrunner, a very prolific talent working across both television and film. He's the creator, showrunner, and executive producer of Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, which will be entering its 4th season when it premieres on March the 7th. Sasha's a really talented dude, a good dude. I got to work with him on an episode in season 5, which is a bit away from getting to your screens, but it was a pleasure getting to know him a bit more on the podcast, and I really think you'll enjoy our conversation. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, stay safe, spread love, and keep creating.